Hello. Oh man, another Tuesday. Yeah. It's been an interesting week. For those of you who were here last week, you know that I've no longer employed. So you would think lots of extra time, sort of. I did do a bunch of work in my fish room. I have a bunch more I need to get done this week. I have to take 2 different tanks down. Well, one is going down permanently. The other one is going down temporarily. And then after taking those 2 tanks down, I have 3 different tanks that have to go up. So, net 1 tank, kind of, sort of. Oh, man. But yeah, been taking time, kind of refocusing, so to speak. So, before we dive into topic, we'll give folks a few minutes to get in here. Let me talk about some other stuff. For those that are here in chat, I'm very curious. There's a young gentleman, he's like 14, who has been in aquatics for a little bit. Apparently, and I found this out through a friend, who wrote a book about how to get into aquatics as a kid. So you have a young man, it's like 14, maybe he might be 15 now, who wrote a book. So he's already like way ahead of me, right? He's far more passionate about this hobby than I am. But I'd be curious if you guys would like to see an interview with him, to hear his story and like what made him want to, as such a young aquarist, write a book specifically for other young potential aquarists. Let me know, chat. I'm curious. Probably we'll talk to him, but we'll see. I've also heard he like watches the channel a little bit, so if you're watching, you know who you are. We'll have to talk soon. All right, let's talk about this topic. A lot of FishTube in general, you have a wide breadth of people, and most of us are trying to share our experience or our passion or the things that we think we're good at, right? That's what most of us are trying to do. And unfortunately, this can often lead to some pretty terrible advice. And I'm going to give you an example, but I want to be very clear here. Okay? I am not trying to say anything negative about this person that I'm going to use as an example. So if you're a fan of this person, don't like rage in the comments right away. Listen to what I'm going to say. Okay? Just, The example I want to use is a video I saw pretty recently from Father Fish. And there's a lot of examples. I could probably pull out like 20 of them. But this is the example I want to use. He has a video, and I think it has a lot of great information in it that says, "Don't change your water." That's the title of it, roughly speaking. And there is lots of good information in this video as to why he has this philosophy. But it's also missing tons of critical information for that philosophy if you have to think a little more broadly. That could, especially for newer aquarists or people that don't have the same water conditions that he does lead to disaster. Now, I might do a longer video on this, but this is just an example. There are tons of other videos out there that are even my own, right? And part of why I get to this is because I have trained myself over time to include some important caveats whenever I'm giving advice about things. Because my experience, right? I happen to have lots of experience doing great things with plants. But my water is way different than your water. And that's the very starting point that we need to start paying attention to. I think very often when we FishTube creators give advice, we forget to include, this is my experience, and part of my experience is based on, and then you would probably include parameter type information. So an example would be like, in my experience, whenever I am doing an aquarium where I want to do minimal water changes, I just want to do top-offs, I have very soft water. So it's a lot easier for me to do that because the raw mineral content of my water doesn't increase a lot. But if I'm not doing water changes and I don't have a buffer in my tank like crushed coral or something similar, I am at a risk of having some kind of crash because I have relatively low carbonate hardness in my water. Now, why do I go with this example? Because the never change your water mentality very often forgets to tell people you need to pay attention to your carbonate hardness, because carbonate hardness is part of what keeps your pH stable. If you lose too much carbonate hardness, and you will, over time, the natural nitrogen cycle of turning ammonia into nitrite into nitrate that is done by bacteria consumes small amounts of our carbonate hardness throughout this process. So that's why if you look at a tank over a long period of time, if you're not continuously adding some kind of buffer, you can actually measure and watch the carbonate hardness slowly fall off. And if you don't pay attention to that, you are at a massive risk of causing some kind of crash. And unfortunately, a lot of newer aquarists don't necessarily know that information. You can't just never change water. If you use these kind of the advice very broadly, are there ways to do it? Yes. But if you use this advice too broadly and you don't know the nuances of things that make that actually possible, you can have like what Rocky and Miles in chat is saying. He says, I have low KH and have had crashes, lost dwarf crayfish from it. I've run into crashes, and this is part of the reason why I learned a ton of this information. So an example, I used to keep a quarantine tank in my bedroom, between the sinks in my master bathroom. Okay? And my master bathroom is like a 80s hotel room where it's two sinks outside and then like a small bathroom with a shower and a toilet, right? It's my master bedroom feels like an 80s hotel room. It's kind of great and terrible all at the same time. But I used to keep this quarantine tank there, okay? And I was quarantining some rainbow fish that I'd bought from a store that I wasn't too sure about. And I would go and pass them, and I'm checking them. They're eating fine. They're looking great. They're swimming around, keeping my water params look good. But I wasn't testing pH. I was just watching ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate so I could monitor for water changes. I had no light on the tank. I had pretty simple filtration, nothing too crazy, just a sponge filter. And all of a sudden I noticed that in every one of my rainbows, they had this kind of cloudiness on their eyes. And I started to panic because I'm like, what disease is this? Oh, is this some kind of Popeye thing? Well, no, it's not coming out, whatever, right? The problem was, and I went through and did a full sweep of tests, and I found that my water, which has basically no carbon hardness in it, it's very low carbon hardness, had crashed off. And they were sitting in 6.0 pH. Possibly even less. And rainbows, in general, there are very few species, but most rainbows, especially the ones I had in quarantine, do not like that much more acidic pH of water. And what it was doing is it was actually affecting their slime coat. They weren't sick. There was no illness going on. The water was just so acidic, it was having a negative reaction to their slime coat. And the easiest way to view it was over the eyes. So did some water changes, put a little bit of crushed coral in there as a buffer. 2 days later, they're looking great. None of that eye cloudiness, nothing like that, right? That taught me a lesson. And from that lesson, I've tried to always include, whenever I give advice, context. As David in chat has very much pointed out, that context is the important thing that is frequently missing from a lot of the advice videos out there. So my cautionary tale to you is not like, no, Father Fish is lying to you. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is, in any of these advice videos, there is always some kind of context that gets overlooked or forgotten, whatever it may be. I do it. I'll forget stuff every once in a while because we know I go on tangents and my brain gets all scattered, right? That's life. That's unscripted life. But there are incredibly large channels in the fish world that have done the same thing. And sometimes it's because those catchy titles and things like that are there just to draw clicks. And I think, in the most part, for smaller channels, that's not the case, but it might be. I'm not sure. However, what I will say is that very frequently we're missing context as to why a person that has a lot of experience doing something specific, whether that's no water changes, deep sand bed, always has great looking Java Fern Bentley, like whatever the heck it may be, is we are often missing the context that will unlock the true information you need. Greg's Planet Tanks says, fish and plants love fresh, clean water. Yeah, I would tell you that if I were keeping Corydoras and rainbow fish, and I never introduced fresh water, those fish would not be very happy. I can literally tell when I do water changes with my fish that they are happy when fresh water is coming into the system. You know, and it doesn't even have to be a full water change. Sometimes it's just my top-offs. I do water changes, just not like every week. You know, I'm usually a pretty busy guy. But yeah, I think there are lots of sets of information out there that miss critical parts of context. And because they miss that advice ends up being detrimental to some people. And that's why I would say it becomes horrible advice, because especially for those of us who might not be as experienced in the hobby, I can think back to when I was newer into the hobby, right? I didn't understand, like, you need a certain level of KH to keep your pH stable. I had heard of crashes, but I'd always assumed it was the like ammonia spikes and things like that. And as long as you introduce fish slowly enough, you're not going to run into that problem, right? Because when I was coming back into this hobby, a lot of that knowledge was just gone. I had to get it brand new and fresh. And I think that's where we run into huge problems with a lot of videos like this, and myself included, that context can be missing, because advice that might be success for me might not be success for you because of the differences in where we live, what our water is like, the types of chemicals that are used to fight off things. You know, I have a tiny amount of chlorine in my water, but there are people in the Bay Area that have chloramine, and the way that you deal with those things are significantly different. People that naturally have an amount of ammonia in their water might approach water changes differently than someone like me, where my water's got nothing in it. Or maybe someone in Florida where their water doesn't necessarily have ammonia, but it's like super mineral rich, like liquid rock. And it's amazing for several species of fish, but the same advice that could be good for someone like, say, Jason of Primetime Aquatics, who's in kind of the middle of the country where African cichlid water basically comes right out of the tap. Probably not necessarily the best for Bentley, who has Discus water coming out of the tap. Super soft, almost nothing in it. Like, it's, you know, these are the important context things that I think are super, super, super important. Wow. So yeah, those are things I want to bring up. And our dear friend Kelly Foreman, the far more scientific member of the Rainbow Fish Psycho Club, said, my friend and rainbow mentor, Lori S., because I can never pronounce her last name correctly because I'm bad at that stuff, once said, every fish deserves clean water. It's kind of like those charities out there to try and deliver clean water to kids in third world nations where getting clean water is difficult. Every fish deserves clean water. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And then Paul Soltero mentioned that a particular person put out a video with a clickbait title about feeding fish. So, yeah. Anyway, some of this stuff happens, and I want to come back. If you actually listen to me the whole time, I'm not trying to rag on any particular YouTuber. What I'm trying to say is that when we watch any YouTube content, whether it's Bentley's, Cory's, Fatherfish, KG Tropicals, anybody, whether it's the smallest creator or the biggest creator, keep in mind that there is always some context missing from advice. And one of the first things you should think about is, well, what's the difference between my situation and theirs? Because it could be your maintenance schedule, your work schedule, the amount of light you give on your tank, whether or not you have high volumes of plants, or maybe you don't have a ton of plants in your tank. All of these things are important when it comes to changing how we absorb that advice. There's always nuggets of truth in almost everything that can help us grow and become better and better in this hobby, become better aquarists. But it's not always perfect to what one person or another is saying. My advice is never perfect. Neither is any other person out there. Even the most learned of learned cannot give you perfect advice, because every tank, every water system, even people that live literally next door to each other, have different water because of small nuanced things, whether it's the piping in their house, whether or not they have certain filters, all this kind of stuff. There's tons and tons and tons of things that influence how your water comes into your aquarium, and it's very important to keep that in mind. So that's my rant and all that kind of stuff. What I will say is thank you for those who stayed with. If you do have questions, we'll go into question and answers at this point. At Belly Pasco makes it super easy. My buddy Greg Jones, he put out a great video earlier today. I watched about half of it before I had to start setting up for stream. I got to go back and watch the rest, but so far already loving it. You've been putting out a bunch of good stuff, like some serious bangers lately, Greg. So Kudos, buddy. Glad to see you back. Said creators who care more about clickbait and sensationalist content don't deserve a subscribe. Well, I put out sensationalist content the other day. What are you talking about? The PetSmart trick, baby. None of it's clickbait. Well, I guess someone might say, even though nothing in the title is indicative of the way you used to be able to break the system that they've fixed, but yeah, whatever. Still can get good discounts and save a ton of money. That's what matters. But yeah, there's lots of folks out there that will try very hard to just chase views rather than give good advice. There's those of us who want to give very good advice. And there's those who intend to give good advice, but might miss some critical things that could lead to disaster for someone that's not going to lead to disaster for them. So yeah. I think more often than not, there are people that unintentionally give advice that ends up being potentially bad than necessarily intentionally do so. But then again, everybody has their opinions in this hobby. As we well know, the internet is never wrong. You are. It's like, oh boy. Anyway, we'll rock on to all sorts of questions. Yeah, so like Craig's Catfish Cave actually put this is a great one. New houses all have plastic piping, so PVC piping for all their plumbing, where old houses typically have copper, and some even older than that will have very different types of plumbing that can affect your water parameters over time. Water heaters versus a tankless water heater system. Older water heaters can start actually having rust in them that can put small amounts of metal into your water that can have all sorts of things. There's tons and tons and tons of little nuanced things that we may not necessarily think about when we are giving or consuming that advice, either side of it, right? Whether it's like Bentley's telling you X, Y, and Z versus, that's not how it works at my house. I got a brand new house. I got all that plastic piping. That crazy Bentley guy is like, I got to do all X, Y, and Z because I got old lead pipes. I don't, but if your house is old enough, you do. Got to repipe them bad boys. But yeah, there's tons of stuff out there. And yeah, you got lots of Plex and all sorts of things. So just keep in mind, that's a really important thing for all of us to pay attention to when we're absorbing advice and trying to apply it in our own fishy adventure. Kingfisher's Catch caught my Melinda Williams Creek with a shrimp in its mouth. Internet told me I needed to act fast. I watched others grab and spit it out until there was no more patience. Yeah, man, rainbows, I love rainbows, and I want to love shrimp a lot. But man, rainbows are just like malicious shrimp hunters. They love the taste of them little shrimpy boys, and they will tear them to bits. It drives me nuts. Drives me nuts. It's very clear certain fish tubers grew up with lead pipes. This dummy on the internet, maybe. Oh, Kelly. Throwing some fire. Nabokov fan, water softeners do a real fun things to water that makes it very puzzling what's really going on with your water. That's another great one. There are lots of places that have fairly hard water that have water softeners, and it can really throw people for loops in trying to understand when they're encountering problems. Aquatic Amito, have you tested the Aquarium Co-op plant lights? Do you have a video on it? I do not, and I haven't got a hold of one yet. I was pondering, okay, small story time. So I went to the co-op for, I wanted a couple of really young SAEs, because this is the time of year where you can get small reticulated SAEs, at least in the Seattle area. They're kind of a seasonal fish to get like little babies, and spring and summer are the best time to buy them super young. So I went up to co-op, and part of having recently been laid off from my job, I have to be very controlled about my spending for a little while until I land a new gig, and then I can go hog wild with my money again, because I'll have discretionary spending once again. And hog wild's not accurate. Like, I try to be careful, but have actual discretionary spending for my fun nonsense. Um, while I was there, and I totally didn't know this, I saw the expansion part of the store had its doors cracked open. I asked the staff, I'm like, hey, is Joel over there working? Because Joel's been working there, but he's not there every day. And I was like, were we making him like work on a weekend or something? And they're like, no, why? And I'm like, well, the doors are cracked open. And they're like, oh, well, we didn't know that. So I walk over there. Turns out Cory and Dean are in there working. This is the first time I've seen Cory, by the way. I've talked to Cory in 2 years. Outside of like, mentioning some small stuff if I ever catch one of his live streams, if I'm not busy. But yeah. So I happened to get a chance to sit and talk with Cory and Dean while they were doing a bunch of plumbing work there. And we got to babbling, right? But the long story short is I went to the co-op for 3 reticulated SAEs and ran into Cory, which is the first time I've seen him in 2 years. I've seen Dean more than that. I've talked to Dean more than that. Dean and I call each other every couple months or so and catch up, or we see each other at club meetings. But I haven't run into Cory in a while. And I don't talk to Cory all that often just because he's fairly busy and I am usually well, okay, that's not accurate. Cory's crazy busy. And then I'm usually fairly busy. So the likelihood that our schedules happen to match up. We did talk a little bit about like conventions. And we kind of, I guess you would say, talk to each other about the things we do and don't like in conventions. Mostly because I was talking about how I was asking him if he was doing like the Aquashellas and stuff this year, or if he was not. I found out I guess he's not doing Aquashella this year or something like that. So yeah. Just random stuff. But yeah, I haven't put my hands on the aquarium co-op light to get back on topic to you, Aquatic Amiga. When I do, I'll do testing and all that kind of stuff. From what I've seen, briefly, I did have some of the like prototypes of the previous light. Well, specifically one prototype of the previous light that I gave some feedback on to them just to try and help them in their design process. This light's kind of like a Fluval 3.5, where it's very similar to the Fluval 3.0 in design, but it has different choices of LED diodes, which is to say it doesn't have like the pink and the blue and that like it does. And also it's not app controlled. It's a physical controller. But it looks like it's pretty decent. And one thing that Cory was talking about is he's trying to work on actually getting it cheaper. But there's certain limitations because of what it takes to do all the shipping and stuff. Because if he does the right sets of negotiations and can get it cheaper, it becomes a screaming deal, right? So interesting, like little tidbits of info I got out of him while I was there for like, I think I talked with him for like 45 minutes to an hour, standing in like a super windy, kind of cool day. So like I ended up going back to my car, putting the fish in the car so they would stay warm, and then standing there talking some more. That's kind of dumb. Oh man. Anyway. I'll answer your follow-up really fast. My favorite freshwater aquarium YouTuber. It changes. So I watch a lot of different stuff. And a lot of, honestly, a lot of YouTube that I watch nowadays is less fish content. Unless I see a video that inherently piques my interest. I do like watching Aquarium Co-op, obviously. I love watching Dan's Fish. Which is mostly live streams with Dan, but when they put out their edited videos, I watch every single edited video that comes out from Dan's Fish. I used to... Most of the other YouTubers that I watch, I kind of watch them in bursts. So, like, I'll have not caught up with Channel X for 3 or 4 months, and then I'll, in a course of a week, watch, like, 6 or 7 of their videos. Another one that I watch pretty often, but I wouldn't say like every video they put out, would be MD fish tanks. Just because I'm kind of interested in the way that he does things, that very vlog style that he has. I like kind of trying watching what he does because obviously he gets tons of views and stuff like that in the style that he has, and he's just got infectious energy, right? I also really like watching Greg Whitsock, the pond guy, because I like seeing like the crazy ponds that people do. Because one day I'd like to be able to do my own crazy pond. Trying to think if there's anybody else I watch super regularly. I think that's kind of it as far as like every week I watch some of the content they put out. But like I said, there's tons of creators that I watch in little bursts. Yeah, so it's tough. There's a lot. There's so many creators out there. That's the problem. I can't like keep track of everybody without like completely ignoring everything else that I'm into. So like I'll watch Green Aqua here and there, or George Farmer. I love George a ton. I will. I like Jadron Aquatics and things like that. When Jadron Aquatics was doing a lot of stuff, when he was like moving his fish room into his business, all the things, I was watching every video he put out. But he's kind of gone dark for a while, so like I haven't watched him. There's just tons of stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of creators that I try to watch. And there's other creators that just like, it's not because I don't like their content. It's just there's so many things and I can only watch so much at a time. And Kaylee Caulfield, you actually have a good example. Like MJ Aquascaping, dude's pretty interesting, right? He's got some cool stuff, but I only have so much time to watch, and I have a couple of different things on YouTube that I pay a lot of attention to. And I just only get so much time to like watch content without basically interfering with my own ability to do things that matter. So yeah, there's that. Oh man. I've got two from Nabokov, but I want to make sure I didn't miss one because I thought I did. Did see Mr. Koski. Okay, yeah. So Jeff Koski, hello from Wenatchee. Weenache. Jeff, you reminded me. I got to email you because I might be coming out to Wenatchee kind of soonish. Given that I don't have to work 5 days a week anymore, and I might go out for a weekend and go see my mama. Might come like babble at you a little bit, meet you in person. Yeah. Got a fish order today. Acclimating now. 20 CPDs Celestial Pearl Dano. A lovely fish. 20 chili rasboras. More tiny, pretty fish. 8 Amano shrimp. And 4 of the true Siamese algae eater. Me personally, I prefer the reticulated SAE over the standard SAE. So the ones that are like almost all silver with a little dot on the tail. And they kind of have a hex pattern. If you look really fine between their scales, it's black. Versus the big stripy boy. But when you got to go to them, you got to go to them. They're very efficient until they get big and lazy. then you just deal with them. But if you do it right, they'll keep eating them. All right, Nabokov fan. I broke down on the ACO forums every LED channel, number of LEDs per channel on the 3.0 light. What do you think this means when it comes to pushing certain spectrums? Part 1 of Part 2. Example, the cool white LEDs is about 70, and the warm white is about double that. So, okay. I think they intentionally try to push specific spectrums because for whatever reason, there is a standard. If you look, there's always this really high spike of blue, and they try to minimize the green light on a lot of fish lights, even though if you're trying to do plants, green light's actually really good for plants. And realistically, like just pure white light is fine. It might actually be optimal unless you're trying to force really particular very, very high demand color saturation plants. So like some of the like super high demand rotalas that you can get like crazy red and orange and things like that. Those ones are where you really want to play with the lights a lot and go for like these crazy custom setups. But for a majority of your plants, you don't need all that BS. It's It's kind of like half marketing spin, half science. Some of it is really good, but not all of it is. That's what I got to say about it. Steven Singer, great content. My new tank has gone green. Best way to take care of that. So do you mean green water? Do you mean green dust algae? Do you have hair algae? They're all different. So that's the important part. Give me a little extra context there, Steven, and I'll do my best to help you. If it's green water, that's very easy. Turn the light off for like 5 days. Don't worry, your tank can handle it. Just understand that every 3 days during that process, change water. Possibly even smaller water changes every day, because as you kill off the algae in the green water, you're going to cause a little kind of minor ammonia spikes. And what you want to make sure is that doesn't overbear your filtration. Now, granted, if you just reduce the amount of light you have, green water should go away. It won't perpetuate. Usually green water occurs when we give it too much light and some other kind of bloom has occurred that helped basically create these tiny microscopic algae to proliferate the water column, as opposed to being a surface algae or a hair algae. Personally, I look at green water as a good thing, but visually it's not very pretty, so I understand that. Oh, Johnny at Dance Fish, just throwing shade. The best fish tuber. Get out of here. Go on, get. Johnny, I don't respect you anymore. Oh, man. Oh, but Jeff Koski's new fish order all came from Dance Fish, so I respect that. I respect that. Caitlin DeRozier, no GSAS meeting tonight. Nope. Because we have the auction, not this coming Saturday, but the Saturday afterwards, so the 22nd? Hold on. I gotta look. Yes, 22nd. The month that we do our big auctions, we don't do meetings, typically. So yeah, no meeting tonight. I think there's a meeting in June and May. Maybe May might be the last meeting before they go on like kind of the summer break, so to speak. There's also going to be an auction for the Greater Portland Aquatic Society in May. So there's an option to hit 2 different auctions if you want to. I'll probably be at both, to be honest. Unless I don't know. Unless I get some like crazy job that says I can't go anywhere. We'll see. Who knows? Who knows how life will change? Nabokov fan with the big statistics. Also, Kingfisher's Catch about hashtag corgi butt videos. I love watching videos of corgi puppies, especially because they're so adorable and not very coordinated. If I want to see a corgi butt, though, I got that all the time. I got my own corgi who's an absolute dork. Nabokov fan, pure white, 182 LEDs, 54% of them. Warm white, 70, about 20%. Cool white, 28, 8%. Pink, 14 LEDs. And blue, 42 LEDs. God, why is there so much blue? I think that's part of the reason why I always have to crank the blue so low on the Plant 3.0. So they have so many diodes that it produces way too much actinic light. And like the black brush algae and all that kind of, it just goes hog wild under that stuff. Drives me crazy, man. I would love a not crazy expensive light that is just pure, clean, 5600 Kelvin white light. 6500 Kelvin, I'll take that too. Anywhere in that range. 5600, 6000, 6500. Any of those three. Just pure white. All day long. I'll take that. I could probably do more with that than I can having to monkey around with all these different color channels and nonsensical stuff. Just give me a dimmer and straight white light. But then again, I'm not super crazy. I'm not trying to do ultra crazy things, but I do kind of go a little nuts with my lighting. What can I say? I love it. Yeah, a lot of people giving some love to MD Fish Tanks. Yeah, dude, that dude's energy is like crazy. I could probably be like psychotic like that, but it would be not authentic. I'm inherently a cynical person. I gotta have my natural like wavelength going on. Connor Costello, have you ordered from Boost Plant? If so, what is your view? I have ordered from Boost Plant. Okay, so I am not sure, and this is not me saying they don't do this or do this. What I'm saying is I'm not sure how meticulous they are about ensuring that some of the more unique or new boosts that they bring in is not just being like massively harvested out of the environment to the point of where it's not sustainable. So I typically try to avoid things unless I know they're grown in tissue culture or aquaculture in some way, shape, or form. There's a lot of plants that are grown in farms nowadays when it comes to boosts, but any of like the newest, most fancy chase boosts never is, and very regularly, unfortunately, the locals who are trying to make money off of it literally rip every single plant out of an area and sell it off, and then it never comes back, and it's gone. So I kind of have personal rules, but what I will say is I've always had very good shipping out of them. Most of my plants arrive in very great health. And I haven't experienced too many issues when it comes to plants converting from them. But to be fair, I order mostly really stable plants that should not have issues. So the fact that a couple have had problems is kind of like, but could be my fault. So, that's my verdict is like 3/4 thumb up. If I knew like how meticulous they were about sustainable harvesting of all the other crazy boosts, then you could go to like full thumbs up. But yeah. Leo209, what's your opinion on Siamese algae eaters? Seeing that they've got a bad rep. Some say they are good, others say aggressive. Benefits of keeping them. When they're young, reticulated and regular SAEs are extremely aggressive algae grazers when it comes to hair algae and brush algae. They're not very good at like, surface algae like this. That's what plecos tend to be good for, and snails are very, very good at. But if you're dealing with lots of hair algae problems or you're trying to prevent them in the first place, they're very good at just like constantly grazing off the surface of your plants and eating that kind of stuff as it's growing in, or taking control of those problems if you have them established in a tank. As they get larger, the standard SAEs start eating more and more protein because they're trying to get ready for breeding. And when they're trying to breed, they get kind of aggressive, not necessarily against other fish in the tank, although some of them will, but that's the case. Some fish of almost any category can be jerks. It's just the way fish are. I haven't experienced too many jerk SAEs, but I have noticed that when I have groups of them, because they're fairly social, they start rumbling and tumbling around and doing the things they would to court or spar. And because they're very fast fish, they'll fly all over the tank. They don't really pay attention, kind of like rainbow fish, but they're big bodied and they kind of bully other fish around a little bit. I don't really see them doing damage to other fish, but they can spook the other fish more so than anything else. The reticulated SAEs, as they get larger, are still very, very, very aggressive algae grazers. They will constantly graze for algae, which is why I keep them. They do not get as lazy as the true SAEs and rely purely on the other fish food you're feeding them, but they will still do that. And as they get big, they do the same thing the other SAEs do. They're trying to prep for breeding. They get a little aggressive in their courting and or sparring when they're trying to do territory battles. And they'll fly all over the tank for each other for a while, and then they'll chill out and be nice to each other. I see it all the time in several of my tanks that have bigger SAEs. Usually big body rainbows just kind of don't care. They just get out of the way because they're just as fast and dumb, right? But smaller fish can get really spooked by that. And there is a potential for like very large SAEs to eat small fish. So like an example, I've had large SAEs in my guppy mansion, and I noticed like, I'm not really getting a lot of baby guppies lately. What the heck's going on? My colony's kind of starting to like shrink and not stay at the size I'm used to, despite the fact that I'm, selling off adult pairs every once in a while. And then I watched like one SAE chase a baby and eat it, and I was like, right, jerks, get them out of the tank, right? Because it's the same thing that goes with almost any fish. If it's small enough to fit in their mouth, it is probably food. That's the way fish operate. So I think the big bad rap they get is it's very easy if you're a heavy feeder of your tanks, kind of me, for them to grow very, very fast and get out of that small range where they're really great algae grazers. And then, because they're big, fast, and kind of aggressive toward food, they sort of positionally bully other fish around. And if your fish are small enough, they might try to eat them because they're a fish. And fish will try to eat anything that fit in their mouth, whether or not they should. Especially rainbows. They're dumb. They do all sorts of stupid stuff. But man, are they pretty. So there you go. I tend to keep reticulated SAEs in all of my planted tanks because they're such good algae grazers. I like them as a control fish. And when they start getting too big, I just move them to the tanks that are full of really big rainbows and I don't have to worry about them. But if I'm like keeping a small rainbow species in there and they start getting big, I move them. They can be hard to catch, but I just don't want them getting to that big size where they kind of get a little bullyish because they're not paying attention with what they do and spooking the other fish. That's how I approach it. Kaylee Caulfield asked about Michael's Fish Room. I do watch Michael's Fish Room every once in a while. I think I posted on a couple of his videos recently with some comments. Very sarcastically, of course, because I do like Michael. I like some of his rants are fun. He's one of those guys that I really want to meet in person so I can just sit, have a beverage and chat with him for a while. Because he just seems like a guy that would be very fun to just sit and BS with. And that's just the vibe I get from him because we're all fish psychos, right? So it's just a matter of like, what's the fish psycho that seems the most interesting to talk to? And he's on that list. He's one of those guys that I really just want to sit down with in person and be able to just shoot the breeze. You know, just talk life, talk fish, all those kind of things. Because he seems like a pretty interesting dude. But yeah, his rants are fun. His rants are pretty fun. He's a grizzled, grumpy old man just like me. Legion Aquatics. I left my tank for 3 days and came back to 2 mono shrimp crawled out using pothos in my tank. Sometimes, man, a mono shrimp just like have a death wish. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. I've had similar problems crawling out of tanks that I kept with lots of plants that went to the surface intentionally. And that's why I don't do rimless tanks anymore. It's like lost shrimp. Try to catch up. Because I'm way behind the chat. All right, there we go. Kingfisher's Catch. Finished up the Dean fry rack system today. I have 3 mops to choose from. Which 2 should I start with? Kalitawas, Melanitania species Lobo, or Pseudomagilla furcatas? Well, I would say what do you think the demand is higher on? And to me, I would say probably Kalitawa and then either Lobo or furcata, right? It depends on whether or not you have people that really want furcatas or you particularly would like to have more furcatas or whether you'd like to have more species Lobo. Me personally, I'd do the big boys because I'm not that into the Pseudomagills so much. I like the big boys, so I'd be doing Kalitawa and Lobo. But I do admit that of the Pseudomagills, furcatas probably my second favorite. I like furcatas a lot because I think they're just unique. My favorite of all the Pseudomagills is Cyanodorsalis, which is a brackish water and even saltwater fish, which is why I don't keep them because that's too much complication. I'm an internet dum-dum. I can't handle that. Or more, I just choose not to for now. Hey, my good buddy. Secret History living in your aquarium. Alex. What's up, buddy? We're looking at I think we're both planning on going down to Portland for their auction. I think we might carpool on our way down there next month. Paul Soltero has the bestest SAEs, and they live very happily in his Discus tank. How hot do you keep your discus? I'm curious. 'Cause I'd be wondering what the how they handle that high temp if you're one of the like the true like high temp believers, or whether you've got ones that do better at that more like right around 80 as opposed to like the 86 range that some people keep them at. Oh geez, I just realized like there's a giant chunk of chat I missed. If I missed a question, just repost it, please. Jeff Koski, my other new tank is a 14-gallon cube. Did an all-natural river bottom with 10 snowball and neocaridina and 40 Thai micro crabs and scuds. In 14 gallons? Jeez. That's a lot. It's a lot of stuff in there for 14 gallons, but yeah. Nathan Hovey, have you seen corgi races? Oh, yes. Oh, yes, I have. So good. The Seattle Seahawks, my local football team that I love quite dearly, even when they suck. Look, the 90s were tough for me, all right? Football as a Seattle Seahawks fan in the 90s was a very hard time. Anyway, they do a corgi race every year at one of the games as a part of halftime. And if I thought Papalimo was a good enough boy, I'd ponder entering him. But I'm pretty confident the second I let him off a leash to run, he'd just be gone. He'd be trying to greet every single person in that stadium like he was running for mayor or something. Hell dog, he loves people to death. And he's usually good as long as there's not another person to distract him that he wants to run at. So it's kind of got to keep him on a leash outside. Although I will say, I'm sorry, I'm on the corgi part. You're just going to have to deal, because I love corgis, especially my dogs. They're lovable idiots. So we'll take Papalimo with us because he loves car trips. So if I'm running something short, like maybe I'm running to the grocery store real fast and not, if it's me and brother-in-law James and only one person needs to go in and run and grab something really fast, we'll take him with, because he just likes going on little car rides, right? Or we'll go to, if it's one of like the few nights that we go and get like some kind of order out food as opposed to cooking at home. And usually we can have him with his leash on, but not actually holding the leash. And he will run and jump up into the car. And then when he's done, he jumps out. He always runs from the passenger side to the driver's side to make sure that I'm coming. And then will run to the door and wait for us, because he's just like so ecstatic that he got to go on a car ride. And usually car rides usually mean like some kind of meal is coming up, whether it's us about to cook dinner or something. And that boy is the like Begatron 9000. And I'm a big softie, so I totally give him like little bits of chicken and stuff whenever we're eating. Or he's a big fan of other than meat, of course, but he's a big fan of bell pepper. Loves bell pepper. So we'll give him little bits of that, or like carrot is another thing that's perfectly fine to give him, right? That he likes a lot. Little things like that. Just it's hilarious to me just to watch that little short dog just truck and just run all over the place, happy as can be. But if there's another human out there, he's not so good about running to the door because he wants to go greet that person. But then usually we can get him to like come back to us and stuff like that. So, he's a good dog. He's just like excited to meet people all the time. he's a little attention hound. Mickey M, after ordering 10 plus 10 of the Scarlet Dario, I actually believe I have now got one female. Not sure though. Dude, that's what it's like. It's so hard to get females. I know that Alex Secret History for a while had some and was breeding them. Do you still have your badasses? Are you still doing those on the Darios, or did you decide not to do those anymore? I'm very curious about that one. I have to go over to Alex's place and just shoot a random video at some point. It's got to do it at some point. Let me see here. We try and get like one or two last questions. We're getting pretty close to the end of the stream tonight. Oh, Caitlin, left room for a few minutes. Not sure if you answered my question. How big is the Portland auction? Considering going, but it's 4 hours is a long drive. I'm not entirely sure, although Kenny from Danikin Aquatics is here. How large their auctions get in comparison to, say, like the GSAS auctions? But Kenny might be able to answer. Going back to his SAEs, the Discus tank ranges from 84 to 86 Fahrenheit, and the 3 SAEs have been in there for 3 to 4 years. They're roughly 5 inches. All right, so they do pretty fine at that temperature. I always get a little like worrisome whenever like there's like they can handle this range of temperatures, and it's like, how well can they handle the extremes? I've seen mine handle cold water pretty well when losing power for a bit, but yeah. I wasn't sure about high heat. Secret history, Alex lost his last baddest female, murdered by the boyfriend. Oh, they are aggressive little buggers. They're like micro murder machines. That's unfortunate. It's going to take you like 7 years to get another female. It's so tough getting females that fish. It's crazy. I don't get why, but yeah. Oh no, Lady Diane Bentley, how many dollar-sized angelfish in a 400-gallon pond? I mean, they won't stay dollar-sized forever. Right? So, I mean, for me, angelfish get super territorial, right? So I would say in a 400-gallon pond, maybe 50 tops. Depends on the species, too. We're talking Leopoldi, they don't get as big. We're talking like Ultims that are going to get like 10 inches top to bottom. 10. You know? I know you're just doing it to make me struggle, Lady Diane. I know you. I miss you, though. It was really good seeing you at the Triple Crown. It was so great to meet you in person. All right. I missed another question. Morgan Bright, how much stratum and eco-complete would you use for a standard 75? Okay, I can answer this question. Not directly. So, it depends on the plants I'm putting into the tank. If I'm doing a lot of heavier root feeding plants, so like lots of crypts, maybe a sword, or an Aponogeton, a crinum, something like that, something that wants a really robust root structure under it, right? Then what I'm going to try and target is about 4 to 5 inches of substrate depth, where I intend to plant those plants, and at least 3 inches for the whole tank. So in that case, what I've usually seen work fairly well is, I'm trying to think, when I did this last, it was in a 40-gallon breeder. So I have to convert from 40-gallon breeder to 75-gallon. And in that case, I used 2 bags of stratum and like 1.5 bags of Eco Complete. Got me about to that depth. I ended up using the full 2 bags just because I don't care about extra substrate. But in that case, to get to a 75, you're probably looking at somewhere between 3 and 4 bags of stratum and 3 and 4 bags of Eco Complete. What I would do is I would start with like 3 of each, and just see what kind of thickness that's giving you. And if you need a little additional, just gauge it based on how much you filled up with those bags. If you don't mind going even higher than that 4 or 5 inches, 4 of each bag will give you a ton of substrate. But I would still probably start with 3 to make sure it's not like, okay, I have way too much. I totally didn't need 4 bags of each. Yeah, and I'm assuming you're talking a standard 75, not like one of the weird 75s, like a 75 long or something like that. Because some of the other 75s, like I have a 75 long, that takes way more substrate because it's very long footprint and very little height to the tank. So, all things to keep in mind. If you're not doing stuff that requires really thick root systems, you might be good with just like 2 bags of Eco Complete and like 2 to 3 bags of stratum and call it a day. So it's all dependent on the plants you intend to use. Just make sure you give that tank lots of time with stratum to like deal with all those nutrients and all that kind of stuff, right? Lots of water changes. It makes your life a lot easier. Steven Singer, I have green water and hair algae. What's your thought of UV light or Purigen? So Purigen won't necessarily fix your algae problem. The thing you need to figure out is what's in excess that's allowing that algae to capitalize on it and not your plants. Is it just too much light? Do we need to dim the light down and relax the light a bit? Is it too much nutrients? Are we feeding our fish too much? Like we can adjust all these things. And what I would say is adjust them one at a time. So first kind of start with your light, turn it completely off or bring it down a little bit. And then start looking at the other things. Like, do you feed 3 or 4 times a day? Try feeding only twice a day or once a day. Do you feed just once a day, but you feed a good amount because you have a lot of fish? Try for a little bit just feeding every other day and kind of watch what happens and see. And if you start seeing like, oh, that green water looks like it's not as dense anymore, then that'll start telling us kind of what's going on and how we can start fixing those problems. If you really need some deeper help on that, Steven, you're welcome to email me. My email is really simple. It's bentley.pasco@gmail.com. I'll put it in chat. Give me some of your like parameters off of some tests. Tell me like your pH, your GH, your KH, all those kind of things you would get in a normal test kit. And a couple pictures. Just help me out so I understand. Let me know the fish in the tank, plants, etc. That'll help inform me enough to try and give you maybe some more tailored advice. Okay. Nabokov fan, have you made any plans to have any fun with Biggs, or is he going to a different trip? Is that directed at me or somebody else? I don't know if Biggs is going to be where I'm going to be. If he is, then we will most certainly do something dumb together. Because that's just life, man. Biggs is too much fun not to have a little fun with. What? Oh, good lord. Kingfisher's Catch, you're killing me. What number of bows could I realistically breed in a 100-gallon 4x4 pond this summer? Absolutely depends on the species and how much coverage you give the fry to hide. If you have lots of insects and insect larvae that's going to be in the water, I've seen people pull out like hundreds of baby fish out of a similar size pond. It depends on the species and how predatory they are toward their fry. So often it depends on the size of the adults. But some species are better than others and will just put out stupid numbers of baby fish. There are lots of good examples of people that have videos of how they set up their summer tubs for rainbows specifically that are very successful. You can also look at like the Rainbow Fish Live group on Facebook, and wonderful folks like Kelly Foreman or Larry Schenkel, Lori S. Some of these people that do that pretty regularly, they all can give you tons and tons of advice. If you haven't, let's see here. If you haven't ever seen Lori's channel, man, can I even remember how to find it? That's the real thing. I always do it when she posts a video somewhere in the Rainbow Fish group. But I was gonna say, if you know Lori's channel, she posts some occasional videos, and she's got some that kind of show her setups, and those are really good ways to learn. Okay, I can probably handle like one more question. Oh, Biggs is going to the one everyone got sick at. So the Triple Crown isn't the Triple Crown this year. It's kind of split up. So he's probably going to the ACA convention, and I'm not going to ACA this year. Really, the only thing I'm going to that's outside of like local, aka the Northwest, for me is going to be the Keystone Clash. So yeah, I'm not going to like the IFGA show that's going to be near Chicago. I just, there's a lot of things that I can't travel to realistically. So as a big guy, plain and simple, whenever I fly, Flying economy is almost impossible. I need seats that are wider to be comfortable. Otherwise, it's like being tortured for however many hours I'm on a flight both ways. And just plain and simple, I won't put myself through that. And in order to fly first class, it's very expensive. So very often I have to like pick one thing that I want to go to, and that's the one thing that I can afford. It's an economics game, right? I am not doing. I'm making them big boy bucks where I could travel a ton. So that's just how it is. All right. One last question. I literally smell dinner in my house cooking, and it's killing me right now. Biggs is going to Madison, Wisconsin for something. Oh, there was a big pet trade show in Wisconsin that the aquarium guys went to, but I wasn't going to that. Okay. Legion Aquatics, I'm trying to make my 10-gallon green water for breeding. I have a light on max for 10 hours, and I'm putting lots of fertilizer, but I'm not getting it. Is it because I have Elodia? Very possible. I would literally turn your light on 24 hours a day. You want green water? Blast that thing. All day. There is a really good video from Dan's Fish about how to make green water and his particular method. Hold on. I'll get you a link. Yes, this is the one. Hello, Mr. Dan. If you can't tell, I love Dan. And I occasionally respect Johnny. This is the video from Dan's Fish about how to make green water. This is his method. It's very, very effective. It works very well. I have a number of friends who have followed this exact video to immense success. So, yeah. There's the best one. The Pennsyltucky Clash is a real thing. Oh. Apparently we need to go half on our own plane. I'll drive. I will say this. If I had enough time off and could just drive certain places, that would be a lot of fun. But one thing that matters, I have a wife who wants to spend time with me, and I have dogs that wants to spend time with me, and I got fish tanks I got to take care of. So, unfortunate. Buy 2 economy tickets, return 1, works with most flights as an ADA thing. That's interesting. My big problem is like the actual like physical seats, because the gaps in them don't retract, are too narrow for like my hips, basically. So it's like basically squeezing myself in a vice for 4 plus 6 hours, whatever it may be. The last time that I did that, where I had to fly economy because there was no first class seat, I was on a flight for 2.5 hours, and when I got off, literally from the top of my hips to my knee, was solid bruised for a week. Just because of me being a big guy. And, yeah, losing some weight, but not fast enough to make that actually function. So, yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's part of being a big boy. You don't get to travel on flights all that easily, unless you like torture, which I'm not into that stuff. Sorry. For those of you who are hoping, nah, it's not my jam. But I'm going to try. Like, I really want to do, like, different... I kind of want to try and do a different convention each year if I can when it comes to traveling. And I'm hoping I get to a point where, like, maybe I can do 2 or 3 in a year that aren't, like, up in the Northwest. So we'll see. We'll see how life pans out. You never know. Omar, there are different size bags of stratum. Whenever I mention bags of stratum, I always mean the biggest bag. Sorry. Context. See? Bentley gave bad advice. Literally in the same stream, talking about fish tubers giving bad advice. Thank you, Omar, for showing me that I'm a dum-dum. Good to see you, buddy. And last comment I'll do for the night from Legion Aquatics. Bentley, I like the sponge filter flow video. I'm glad you did. It's been fun. Canister is next. That might be a nightmare. It might take like 2 hours to do that thing. I don't know. I wasn't getting great circulation, but then I added more airflow, and now I get great slow circulation. Perfect. Perfect. That's what we're looking for, right? It's just an understanding that there are little variables that we can play with, no matter the type of filtration we're using, that change the way the circulation occurs in our tank, and often can be for the benefit. So yeah. It's Tuesday. I'm going to go have some delicious tacos made by my brother-in-law, James. I hope that you all have a fantastic evening. If you are up in the Pacific Northwest, the 22nd of this month, the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society is having their general auction. You can find that on gsas.org. Next month, in May, the Greater Portland Aquarium Society is having their big plant auction. I will probably be at that too. You can look up Greater Portland Aquarium Society online. You should be able to find the details on their website. And if not, I'll have a community post with some details closer to the event itself. So if you're in the Northwest, you want to come hang out and maybe buy some stuff, check those out. As always, gang, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.